try to get by without this. Can you hear me, Dana? Dana, you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's good, because I tend to be a little mobile speaker than somebody that'll stay put. It's going to make his job a lot harder. I'm going to play to your audience and not him. Is that okay? Changes the dynamic a little bit. I got all these people that know me really well. They know all the dirt about me. We used to travel a lot on the Yellow Pages, and we invented the phrase, Las Vegas picked up on it, what goes on the road stays on the road. We used to travel about 6 months out of the year. I can tell you I am so gratified, so pleased, so humbled to be able to come and share with you guys this morning. As you saw in my bio, I'm going to talk a little bit about the teachers of my life. And I will let you know I'm the most fortunate man on the planet, as I said in my bio. I really am. As I look back at the people who have intersected my life and how they have changed me and transformed me, I am a very, very fortunate man. I'm going to identify a couple of disclaimers before we get started. One is I feel a little bit like Cinderella at the ball. I think one of the first meetings that I attended here, the speaker was Dick Lutke. I've known Dick and Connie for 30 years. And for those of us in business, it's one thing to take something that's really good and sustain it, but to take something that's really, really good and make it really, really, really good, to make it much better, I feel a little bit inadequate following somebody like a Dick Lutke. Jerry Kendall, just 3 or 4 months ago, shared with the group, I mean, he's my hero. He should be everybody's hero. How do you compete with a Jerry Kendall of life? Yet, God has taught me and instructed me through really faithful men and women. And I just want to pass along some of those wonderful intersections of life that those teachers have had in my life. One other disclaimer I want to make, and that is that I am a full-fledged member of the human race.
Welcome.
Welcome indeed, yeah. With all of its pitfalls and all of its failures and all of its shortcomings, I plead guilty to being part of that organization. I used to travel with my sweetheart and I in a ministry, and one of the young men that traveled, well, not so young looking back at it, that we traveled with, used to say I was born again in 1948, and I was born in 1948. I'm sorry, born in 1948. I was born again in 1977. And he loved to say, and I've been recycled many, many, many times over. And that's true of all of us, part of the human race. Two of the men that I most respect in life are my sons. My son Stephen, my son Andy. Barney and I were having a conversation just at breakfast just a little bit ago, and we talked about this magical moment. I can't tell you when it happened, but somewhere along the way I realized that my sons had become my best friends. And tell you a little bit about my sons. When I grow up, this is a true story, when I grow up I want to be just like my sons. They have both become such extraordinary gentlemen, Christian gentlemen. They are communicative. They are good listeners. They are effective questioners. They are sensitive to their wife's needs. They are everything that I wish I was. Stephen is a musician that has turned into a music producer. He's a digital engineer. I like to brag on him. One of the clients he's just got a hold of is Glock, the firearms company.
Wow.
Wow, that's exactly right. Wow. just thought how great it is to see this young man prosper at what he does. Most of you don't know me. And most people I run into don't know me. But then I explained to them that I'm Andy Tracy's dad. And, oh, you're Andy's dad. Andy's a collegiate and career pastor here in Tucson. And my claim to fame is I'm Andy's dad. I'm Joe's husband. I'm Britton and Kiera and Olli's grandpa. And it is a gratifying thing to see when your children kind of turn that corner and become your best friends and also really effective members of the kingdom. As I said a minute ago, I've had lots and lots of teachers come into my life. And I'm going to share a lot of those names, and I'm going to kind of sound a little bit like I'm rambling. And the reason I'm doing that is because I found that life doesn't often give up its secrets in a nice digital sequential pattern. It's like one storm after another, and see what you can learn out of that storm. But I have tried to be a good listener. I've tried to be a good student. Henry Blackaby, in his book about experiencing God, really, I'm going to paraphrase his whole book, and it's unfair to him. But he says, listen, if you just pay attention, God is at work all around you. He is teaching you through all kinds of venues. If you'll just pay attention, you'll be a good student, and if you do well, you'll become a teacher downstream from those lessons of life. One of the things I've discovered, you have too, is that truth is truth, no matter who's speaking it. I learn from my grandchildren all the time. It's not part of my formal notes here, but Joe got home last night from watching, my wife Joe, from watching our two grandchildren. One of them was off to the doctor, and Tobi brought back, my daughter-in-law brought back a donut for everybody. And Joe wanted to bring it home and said to Tobi, I'm just going to take this home to Howard. And my little grandson says, oh no, Grandma, you got to have some too. It's for both of you. And he is always sharing. He is like that. And if I listen to Britton, I can learn a lot about the kingdom of heaven from what my little grandson has to say. As Doug pointed out, got some people here from the Yellow Page business. One teacher in my life I want to introduce you to is Frank Rowan. Frank had come to Tucson to do some training, and we'd gone through a couple of days of training. We got back the middle, right after lunch on the third day, and we're all ready for the crescendo, right? The final, the wrapping up of the teaching. And Frank comes up to the podium just like this, and he goes just like this. I got a question for you. You got an attitude? I just waited. Then he said, how's it working for you? Well, there's such profound words. I don't know about you guys, but I was in that environment where, in that place in life where I started thinking about, man, I'm hoping this guy hears that. Hoping that person gets this. But that message was for me, right? To look at life through Christ's eyes. To look at people through Christ's eyes. Another teacher I had was Jim Cullenber. I'm just curious, anybody been around long enough to remember the name Jim Cullenber? He was a pastor here in Tucson for 40 years. Tucson was Santa Claus without the hair. And by the time I got to Jim, or Jim got to me in my life, he had been retired for many years, but he used to fill the pulpit for pastors that were on vacation and stuff like that. And Jim would get up in front of the congregation, And keep in mind, he's this round, just enthusiastic individual. And he said, God's bigger than what's the matter, and I ain't mad at nobody. Just stop and think about that. God's bigger than what's the matter, and he ain't mad at nobody. I would just submit to you, those are the pillars on which our whole Christian faith rests. God's sovereignty, his greatness, and God's love for us. God's bigger than what's the matter, and I ain't mad at nobody. Del Tackett, many of us have seen him. He challenges us with this question: do we really believe that what we believe is really real? See, Dale's just another one of those teachers that just kind of come in like a rocket into my life. And if I'm paying attention, do I really believe that what I believe is really real? Is God really there during times of difficulty and adversity? When, we're told, thou shalt not murder. Well, I haven't gone postal on anybody lately. But God also tells us to love those that hate you, to pray for those that persecute you, to be kind to those that are unkind to you, to be generous to those that aren't generous. That's where, for me, that's where the lessons of life really confront me. Do I really believe that what I believe is really real? The Proverbs tell us to avoid slothfulness. Well, I try not to be slothful, but the scriptures also tell me I'm playing to an audience of one. Do I really think, comprehend that what I'm doing at all times is being viewed by God? Do I play to that audience? I'm so glad that people like Jim Culliver and Del Tackett have come into my life. Another man that is no stranger to some in this room, Dr. Jerry Banger. I'm grateful that God brought Jerry into my life. Dana and I used to play hoops at Jerry's house. That's before Dana got rich and famous. Forgot all this little.
So, fill me in on the rich.
Jerry and I have lunch often. As a matter of fact, I'm on Jerry's call list. If somebody stiffs him at lunch, he calls me, and I'm an easy make. If I can have lunch with Jerry, I will. I was having lunch with Jerry, and I don't mind telling you, maybe a little puffed up. I says, you can tell a lot about a guy by looking at his daytime or his checkbook. And that's true, isn't it? Yeah. Just by the way, take a little bit a side trip here. In 1976, what is that? That's most of 40 years ago. I'm pulling into one of my clients' parking lots, and Randy Carlson is having a conversation on the radio with his father-in-law, Warren Bolthouse. And I don't know what brought Randy to the point where Randy said this. He said, have you ever considered that God hasn't entrusted you with wealth because you can't be trusted with wealth? It's just another one of those moments, those teachable moments, and I'm just paying attention. You can tell Randy I told him.
I will. I'm ratting you out.
Anyway, Jerry, in response to my comment about daytimers and checkbooks, he said, and there's one other thing you can add to that. And right here's another teachable moment from a good teacher. He says you can tell a lot about a man by how he treats someone that can do absolutely nothing for him. If I just pay attention, these life lessons just come at you like a hurricane. Out of that conversation, started to think on that. Stephen Covey, in his book 7 Habits, talks about the tyranny of the urgent. And I've discovered that the urgent very rarely accommodates people. But out of that conversation with Jerry about how you treat people. Somebody that you meet at the grocery store. Somebody takes your money at the fast food place. Out of that, I've concluded, ready for this profundity? The only thing in life that matters, the only thing in life that matters is people. Do I really believe that what I believe is really real? Do I really believe all this is going to come and go? The only thing that's going to go into eternity is souls of people and the Word of God. Barbara and I were at a manager's meeting, and one of the speakers was Rick Pitino. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I did.
Just going along with this whole idea of people being important. Rick said this. He said, I coach to the players' strengths and not their weaknesses. He says, I make their weaknesses irrelevant. Then he went on to say, I don't ignore them, but I don't fixate on them. I tell you that it is so natural for me to look at the blemishes in other people. I don't want to do that. I want to make those weaknesses irrelevant, play to their strengths. And then he said this, I just simply treat them the way I want to be treated. Boom. It's just the Word of God confirmed all over again. There's a name here that's not unfamiliar to most of you in this room. That's Jack Heald. I disciple people. I mentor people. You know what Jack does? He works with guys. And Jack's been working with guys for 40 or 50 years. And I'm privileged to be able to spend time with Jack. Often. And every time I sit with Jack, I make it a point to be a student. Jack says that all of us should have Pauls and Timothys and Barnabases in our life. People that are teaching us and people that we're passing along the faith to. This doesn't happen by accident. You go back and tell Randy I said this too. I love Randy's radio program, Intentional Living. There's something to be said about intentionality in how we go about our life. Looking at people the way God looks at them. Treating them the way that God treats them. We're the product of our affections, right? What we treasure, there our heart will be also. I'm told that. So I show up 6 or 8 months ago and minding my own business. And you know who comes out of the mist? It's Dana Cooper's dogs. By the way, Dana, I want to let you know, I am so glad. It's kind of like finding out that somebody else really likes wasabi beans, that somebody else really does pull the neighbor's weeds. I just can't help myself. Maybe we ought to get together, Weed Anonymous or something like that. So, how many of you remember Dana's speech? He's talking to us, and he talks about he's out walking his dogs, and he's not paying attention to anything that's important, right? He's thinking about the day and all that. And all of a sudden, boom, there's a stop sign. Dana Cooper comes right out of nowhere. Boom! Now, most people that know me know I'm a pretty enthusiastic guy about life. And I start every day thanking God for the things that are in my life. I just want to let you know, Dana, that message just took it up a notch. We were talking earlier about living in Tucson. I just stand. There's the Santa Rita Mountains. There's the Rincon Mountains. There's the Catalina Mountains. Tucson Mountains. If I just stop and pay, I'm just surrounded by God's goodness. His heavens declare His glory. His handiwork. Let me just finish with one more name. Jim Cummings. Jim was a retired pastor from Illinois. And Jim told a great story. He had never been out of Illinois in his whole life. And I don't know to this day what gripped him to move to Arizona. But he was looking forward to the trip because he had heard all his life about the Rocky Mountains. So he gets to the corner of Kansas and Colorado, right? And he's seeing the, and these are Jim's own words. Oh, they're not so big. They're not so formidable. And of course, you know the rest of the story is he keeps going west. Those mountains continue to grow and grow and grow. And Jim pointed out that's exactly what our life with God is like. The closer we get to him, the greater he is, the smaller we are, the less significant we are. I mean, it's the whole idea of the finite, trying to comprehend the infinite. How do you get your arms around that? Well, there's something else that Jim taught me in life. Not only the closer you get, the bigger those mountains are, but the higher you go up in those mountains, the steeper the grade is. And he pointed to Isaiah 40. Those who wait upon the Lord, they will soar as on wings of eagles. They will run and not go weary. They will walk. Do you see the progression there? Soaring, running, walking. You go to Psalms, first Psalm, and you see a progression there too. Walk, stand, sit. The steepest grades are the ones that are nearest the top. And my experience has been that the more I know about God, the more he wants of me, expects of me. Years ago, I started saying something, I don't know where I picked it up, but no matter what time of the day, and those of you that know me well, somebody can pass me in the hallway at 3:30 in the afternoon and say, good morning. And obviously, a lot of times they'll say, good morning. What do you mean, good morning? It's 3 o'clock. And I'll say to them, yeah, but it's the first hour of the rest of my life. Just, it's a great little way to teach. Somebody taught me and I taught them. So, it's Wednesday morning in Tucson. It's the first hour of the rest of our life. So I'll just say to all of you, good morning.
Good morning.